Hey guys, welcome to another Gauging Gadgets Garmin comparison video. In this video I'll be doing a comparison between the Garmin Vivoactive 4 on the left right here, and then the Garmin Venu on the right. Both these watches came out at the same time from Garmin, and they both are priced at $350. So check the link in the description to find that price. Before we get started, I just want to say that I've made several tutorials about both of these watches, so if you're interested in looking at the features and learning how both of these watches work, check the description because I'll have links to playlists for each of the watches. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started with a comparison between the Vivoactive 4 and the Garmin Venu. So right off the bat, both of these watches are basically the same, with the biggest differences being the size and then the displays that they have. The Vivoactive 4 actually comes in two different sizes. You have a 45mm version, that's the one that I have here, and then you have a 40mm version, and that is the size of the case across. The Garmin Venu comes in a 43mm version, so it's just a little bit smaller. When it comes to thickness, the watches are just about the same, with just a few tenths of a millimeter off. They're 12mm thick, and it's basically the same when you measure the weight of these two watches, with the Venu being 4 grams lighter than the Vivoactive 4. Now, when taking a closer look at the design differences here, you can see that the bezel on the Vivoactive 4 is going to be a smooth stainless steel, where the Venu will be a stainless steel as well, but it has some etchings in the bezel that kind of add some texture and a really kind of a unique look for a Garmin watch. Now, the colors for these watches are very similar as well. You can get both of these watches in the shadow gray with the stainless steel bezel, as you can see on the Vivoactive 4, or as you can see on the Venu, the black case with the slate bezel. So it's really up to your preference. I do have to say though, this is the first shadow gray watch I've gotten from Garmin, and I really love the way it looks on my wrist. And I'll just give you a quick look at both watches on my wrist here. Very similar looking watches. I do like the contrast with the shadow gray, and I do think that the 2mm on the 45mm Vivoactive 4 does look better. See the bands here. And also with the color difference, you get the slate buckle on the band as well, where you get stainless steel on the shadow gray. So just something to look at with your preference there. So other than the display, when it comes to the design and the look of these watches, really those are all the differences. And one last difference between the two watches when it comes to the design is going to be the size of the bands here. So the Venu has a 20mm band, and this is a quick release, where the larger 45mm Vivoactive 4 has a 22mm band. So that's just something to note before you get it. You won't be able to switch out the bands if for some reason you get both of these watches. So really, other than the display, when it comes to the design and the look of these devices, those are going to be the main differences. They both have silicone bands. They have two buttons that look exactly the same on the right side. When you look at the back of the watches, you can see that the charging ports and the heart rate monitors are exactly the same. So no differences there. Now let's talk about the biggest difference on the watch, and that's going to be the display here. So the Garmin Venu is actually the first Garmin watch of this type with a watch face like this to have an AMOLED display. In the past, all Garmin watches have had an always-on display, so that means it doesn't require much battery life to keep this watch face on, and you can see it very well in daylight because it kind of has a reflective look to it, if you can see it right there. And then they also have a backlight on it so you can see it at night or in dark environments. Where the Venu has an AMOLED display, so as you can see, much more detail there, but it is going to turn off quite often, and that's to conserve the battery life because this display does use more battery life. So you'll see it turn off very quickly right there, and then you can no longer see the watch face, where with the Vivoactive 4, if I turn it, you can kind of see that the watch face is always on. And like I said, the AMOLED display on the Venu does use more battery life, so that means you're going to get less battery life overall out of the Garmin Venu. The Vivoactive 4 offers, I would say from my testing, around 7 days of battery life depending on the activities you do, where the Garmin Venu at best is going to give you about 5 days of battery life depending on the activities you do. Now usually there is more battery life used when you're using the GPS on the watch, but because these watches are basically the same other than the display, both of these watches will give you about 6 hours of GPS usage. So if you're doing a run or something like that that requires the GPS, you'll be able to do that activity for about 6 hours before the battery dies. So what's the benefit of the AMOLED display on the Venu if it gives you worse battery life and it turns off quite often? Well, you get a very beautiful and vibrant display that has 390 by 390 pixels, where the Vivoactive 4 only has 260 by 260. The display is somewhat smaller at 1.2 inches on the Venu compared to 1.3 on the Vivoactive 4, but as you can see, the detail there, the color, the Venu display looks awesome, and I really have enjoyed the way it looks. when compared to every other Garmin watch. Now, to kind of highlight the differences in the displays here, I've used Face It, which is a Garmin app where you can make your own watch faces out of your own images and things like that. I took a picture in Arches National Park here, and on the right you can see the color, you can see the clarity of the image with the road and the rocks in the background, where on the Vivoactive 4 you could still see that somewhat, but it's just not as vibrant and it does not look nearly as good. And if you'd like to learn how to use Face It to make your own watch faces like this on any of the Garmin watches really, check the description because I do have a tutorial on how to do that. Now really there's one other small difference when it comes to the Venu versus the Vivoactive 4, and it's really related to the display. On the Garmin Venu in an activity, you cannot have a white background show in the display, which can make it a little bit easier to see it when you're running because you have the white background with the difference in contrast. So nothing really that big. I just wanted to point that out because I have had some questions about that. All right, so those are really all the differences between the Vivoactive 4 and the Venu. If you look online on the Garmin website, for some reason it states that the Vivoactive 4 does not have the GPS sensors for GLONASS and Galileo. As you can see, that is false. They have wrong information on their website, and it even shows it if you do a comparison on their website between the Venu and the Vivoactive 4. So I just want to put that to bed. The Vivoactive 4 does have both of those sensors. I've been wearing the Venu for about a month, and I wore the Vivoactive 4 for about a month and a half, maybe 2 months. And I do have to say, while I really like the display on the Venu, I prefer the Vivoactive 4. I like the always on display, I like the added battery life, and I also like the size of the Vivoactive 4. I think it just fits better on my wrist. Now, before I end this video, I just want to quickly state that when it comes to the similarity between these two devices, they have exactly the same activities available, the same data fields available, and they measure the same data when you're doing an activity. In addition to that, they both have menstrual cycle tracking, hydration tracking, pulse ox, body battery, Garmin Assistant and incident detection, the ability to store music on the watch and also connect Bluetooth headphones. They have Wi-Fi. You can view all the notifications from your phone and even respond to them if you have an Android phone. They both have Garmin Coach, and they both track your stress level as well as your breaths per minute. All right, so that was a quick comparison between the Garmin Vivoactive 4 and the Garmin Venu. If you have any questions about these devices, leave a comment below. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. If you'd like to see more tutorials or reviews of both of these watches, check the links in the description. If this video helped you, give it a thumbs up, and please consider subscribing to my channel, Gauging Gadgets, for more gadget reviews and tech tutorials. Thank you so much for watching.